Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sister Science podcast. So, in today's fast-paced world, slowing down feels like a luxury, but it's actually a necessity for our well-being. We discover over and over and over again how going slow helps us digest, going slow helps us process our body's experiences, going slow helps us sleep, going slow just in every aspect of our being helps us be in awareness and in touch with ourselves. And yet, we dismiss it. So, Chelsey and I really want to dive into this conversation today. And I want to thank you for being here again with me, Chelsey Beda, and having this conversation that is so very important. I want to start by just asking you, what does going slow really mean?
Well, for me personally, I have an on and an off. I don't really have the going slow part unless I'm really struggling with energy, which is definitely something that's happening in my life right now. The on and off, or the like high productivity output to like rotting on the couch, as we culturally call it now, it's really not like a healthy swing of the pendulum. And so right now, I'm really struggling with honoring my humanness and honoring that my wish list of the things I want to do in a day, but also in a lifetime, um, have to be broken down to much smaller steps. And also, I can only do about 50% today of what I want to do. And in my mind, I think I can do it all because our culture really spreads this like message of like you can do everything and you can be your best self every day if you only do this and that,
Oh,
but it never really ties into like how do you feel inside and like how our cyclical energy from day to day to week to month to year changes.
oh man, you've just touched on about 10 things that are really important. One thing I want to link to is a podcast by Terry O'Reilly of Under the Influence, and he has one about the advent of the superwoman. And he said it was
Mm,
a marketing construct created when they were no longer able to sell to the housewife because women didn't want to be associated as just a housewife. And so he said we created the superwoman mythology because women were still making the buying decisions in the home, but they didn't want to be perceived this way. So we had to sell housewife products to the superwoman. And I was just like, when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, we've been trying to live into something that is an imaginary construct. Yeah.
absolutely. And I feel like at this current point in time that myth has grown to such a proportion. It is 100% unsustainable, and our health, not just of ourselves, but of our children, our family members, are like suffering.
Yeah.
Not that we're responsible for all their healths, but there's like a trickle down effect, right?
There's something about women and you're speaking to it right now around when we take care of our well-being. It's almost like putting our own oxygen mask first. It's slowing down enough to prioritize our own wellness that all of a sudden we do have that ripple out capacity that can take care of others. But we're
Mhm.
really having to relearn what that looks like. Instead of us multitasking a million things, it's us
Mhm.
knowing what to say no to, knowing what to say yes to, and then knowing what we need to prioritize in ourselves. So the slowness comes into play in our discernment.
And that's a lot of things. Like you just labeled three categories of like many things that can live in each category. So how do you prioritize that without getting scattered and dispersing your energy in all different directions where it's really just leaking and you're not actually getting anything done or making forward progress like you want?
Yeah. I need to pause and I'll cut this other recording because if I don't let my cat out, she's going to bug us
Yep,
the whole.
all good.
Okay, let you out. For the cut purposes, can you say a bit more about prioritizing that?
Yeah. Okay, so tell me where you want me to start and I'll jump in. Like going back to the three things, like the three categories.
Talk about those three categories again.
So list them one more time for me. You
So one would be knowing what to say yes to, knowing
yes.
what to say no to,
Hmm.
and knowing what I need to do to be able to have capacity.
Hmm.
Those are the three things where it's like we need to get a new, instead of just multitasking and freaking,
Yeah.
saying yes
Yeah.
to everything, saying no to nothing, and then not doing any of our stuff because it wasn't on our priority list. We need to have a new relationship to kind of our energy output
Hmm.
so that we can be sustainable. And that, I think speed has so much to do with those decisions.
Well, I want to say those three categories, what to say yes to, what to say no to, and then the last one was like what your body is kind of telling you. Is that what that
Yeah,
was?
yeah.
Um, those are three filters. And to do that, if you're never connecting with yourself, period, you're never going to know. Your mind will tell you you know, but your mind isn't always a good resource for that. Our minds are really, when we think of like in yoga, the ajna, the mind, it's about seeing things through all time. So time isn't really definitive. The truth of all time, which truth is always changing in the moment. So if you're using your mind to make a decision in the moment, it's not always good at actually honoring what you feel inside your body and what your body needs and says is true.
Yeah.
Because our mind is a sponge and it's taking in a lot of input from a lot of sources that are saying a lot of opposite things. And depending on where you grew up, what culture you live in, who your community is, who are in your inner circle of your life, they're going to be telling you a lot of different things. And it might be true for those people, but it might not be true for you and what your body says is
So
true.
herein lies this whole idea of this slow living movement, or this idea that slow is becoming a superpower, is that in order to not react and fall into your default responses when you are making decisions, what to say yes to, what to say no to, what do I need, that speed then becomes a tool in connection, in awareness, and in discernment. So if I think of my connection to self, which you just said, if you find
Mhm,
that, you automatically have a little bit more intelligence, wisdom
mhm,
in
mhm,
behind your decision. Um,
100%.
yeah, discernment, which is your ability to make choices that are aligned. Like speed has everything to do with that. And then your awareness, like you're actually
Yeah.
aware of the fact that this decision will affect your XYZ, your energy levels, your capacity, your ability to do something else, whatever it is, like your awareness around it.
And that's awareness is the key word. That is where busyness and speed is insulating us from our true awareness. We can only be aware of so much when we're overstimulated. It's going to be whatever's kind of throwing you off your center. That's going to be the most irritating thing first, which, might look like anxiety or depression or any of those kind of mental healthy things that crop up. It could be ADHD, which is it's also a neurodivergent born thing for people, but it can be aggravated by speed, right? And how much you're taking in. And so to develop awareness takes effort. It's not just something that you're going to get with instant gratification. Where these other things that are more stimulating, that are a little bit faster, a little bit easier to tap into, kind of pull you away from.
And so the practice of slowing down then, it is okay, so it's a practice that takes effort. And I guess my questions are my inquiries even in myself are around, is it around things I need to do so that then I can have awareness, that I can be in connection? Or does it simply happen where it's like, Jill, slow down? And that in itself is enough. Like, I don't know. Is it, I guess that's the piece is that you have to be able to interject that moment where you where you interject a pause. Is that the effort piece?
Well, the effort piece is actually developing habits that you consistently tap into your awareness. And there's many ways to do that. Slowing down will help with like the level of stimulation and input you're taking in. But the truth is, um, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to tap into awareness if you slow down.
Yeah, that's true. So then yoga gives us the outline. Yoga says, I know how to do this.
Mhm,
It's putting up its
mhm,
hand in the background now, and it's like the yamas and yamas are your ethical practices. I'll just put those to the side for now. But then it says asana, poses, breath work, pranayama,
mhm,
withdrawal of your senses, pratyahara, and single pointed focus. And it would say if you
mhm,
do asana, pranayama, pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, and
mhm,
dharana, single pointed focus. This leads you down this pathway to awareness, and you need
mhm,
to go through that process nice and slow.
mhm.
Yeah.
Different things will help different people. Like you just labeled off like 5 different things. That's still 5 things, right? I think it comes down to a single point of awareness of something. And for different people and constitutions, it's you're going to use a different thing for each one, right? So if you're like really hyperactive, neurodivergent, focusing on your breath or nothingness is going to be really challenging and frustrating and is probably going to create the opposite, at least in the beginning with
Yeah.
them. So you want to give them an activity that is still single focus, but it's active. So they have something to hook onto that grounds them in a way of like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and it is repetitive. But by focusing on that one thing, it's taking my senses away from many things. So I can feel confident that I can do that. My mind has something to work with, and I'm not just beating myself up because I feel like I'm unsuccessful.
100%. I know we do have this belief in our society that everything should be at our fingertips. And when our own connection to self, when our own awareness or ability to have discernment isn't like right there at our fingertips, we do
Mhm.
feel like somehow we're um like just going through life without an udder or without a rudder.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, without an udder too, maybe.
That was funny.
Um, but yeah, like I get this whole slow thing. I really do, and I feel like it's changing in me. What you said at the beginning around, I feel like I want to do 50 things and I can only get 25 done, or I feel like I need to do
Mhm.
10 things and I can only get 5 done. I'm starting to really believe in universal timing.
Mhm.
Starting to really believe that, if I do one thing right and I get it done well and completely,
Mhm.
that one thing will propel me forward rather than doing 10 things half-assed.
Right. Or just like 3 things, but you feel bad because you weren't able to accomplish the other 17. And so you feel like a failure. And I think our cultures really set us up for failure on the expectations of like how you should feel.
Mhm.
There's a lot of shoulds that we've like pulled into our belief systems that set us up for failure time and time again. So I really think it's awesome that doing that one thing, you're making sure you give yourself a pat on the back. And you need to build a habit of doing that because it's kind of contrary to our culture to do so in today's day.
Mhm. I know in our Year of You course, we use the sentence, "What do I need right now?"
Mhm.
We use it as a way to interject that pause. We use it as a way to bring ourselves into the present moment and scan the body and feel what it is asking for. And it's our an ability to notice that we don't feel connected, and it's our
Mhm.
ability to draw ourselves back into connection, but it requires that slowing down process. Yeah.
Mhm.
Can you help talk about sort of the mental and the emotional digestion?
For sure. Um, so for me, to talk about that, I kind of have to talk a little bit about like my past history and a little bit of like some trauma things that like happened to me. I'm not going to go deep into the story, but I just want to paint people a picture of like where I'm coming from and the tools I've had to gain to work through some of the garbage that lives in my mind that's really been an obstacle. So, as a child, I grew up in a dysfunctional home. And on one side, I had a mom who's like an addict and an alcoholic and just tuned out from life and just basically gave up on life. And she's still kind of in that struggle a little bit today. And then I grew up with a father who was very controlling and strict and quite like narcissistic. And so everything was about their problems, whether it was my mom or my dad, right? And so I basically didn't really exist outside of like what I was doing wrong. And I was a bit of a scapegoat. So if I was just in the room, I was doing something slightly annoying, like I was wrong and made wrong and bad for that. So, like growing up into my adult life and having my own kids, that even though those family dynamics weren't really active in my everyday, those belief systems and kind of negative, heavy, kind of failure programs in my mind were running always. And so, as a child, um, my way of dealing with it was to just detach and go to a fantasy world of my mind.
Mhm.
But in adult life, you can do that occasionally, but you got real responsibilities. You got to do stuff. You got to get shit done. You have kids you got to take care of. And I also did not want to pass that down to my kids. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so how does slowing down help you with that story running?
So for me, I would get very emotional. I would get my body would just freeze and I would feel very emotional. I'd feel stuck. And so I knew when I was in this point, the first thing I would have to do is journal and just without judgment, write out everything, write out all of the junk, all the horrible things I was thinking and feeling, all of the stories, which is time consuming. But it gave me a place to put it on a page and see about 95% of it actually didn't matter. And there was like maybe 1 to 3 key things that actually were really bugging me. And they tended to be interpersonal problems of some sort of confrontation that needed to take place to deal with a relationship issue. As a child, I learned it didn't matter what I did or said, nothing was going to be resolved.
Mm,
And so as an adult, I had to kind of walk in faith and believe there was another option. And so doing the journaling, discovering what was actually really bugging me, because we even delude ourselves on what's actually bugging us. Our mind tells us a lot of stories. Most of it isn't true when it gets to that like really negative stuff. Um, but there's a few key things are, And it's up to us as adults to go and deal with it. My parents were able to deal with those relationship issues. They never had it in them to see inside what was bugging them so they could deal with it. And they took totally opposite ways of dealing with it. My mom was internal. She would victimize herself and then make poor choices. And my dad was external. He would throw it on the other person. He's never wrong, you know?
So,
So for me, it's taking self-responsibility.
yeah. And what how you're describing this, and when I think about going fast and going slow, I think about the way we bypass those times when our emotions are demanding to be felt, or when we're being shut down, or when we feel like we just want to curl up on the couch and numb ourselves, or doom
Hmm.
scroll, or just
Hmm.
escape. And
Hmm.
what you're saying is that so it it's not just like going to that numb.
Hmm.
It's going slow enough that you notice what it is that your body's asking of you. And what you sort of said, it to
Hmm.
me, it sounds like you got to feel it to heal it. You were like, I needed
You
to
got
go.
to feel it to heal it. But more than that, you're feeling something for a reason. You're not feeling that for no reason. So that's like on an emotional scale. There can also be like if you think of a baby or a child, like what are the three things that you think of most? Like, do they need a diaper change? Obviously, for adults, you should be using the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, what about your sleep? Did you get a good sleep? Are you going to bed regularly and waking up regularly? What about what you're eating without going into like diet regimen? Like, are you eating a fairly balanced diet where your energy levels are sustainable throughout the whole day from when you wake to when you go to sleep? Are you eating at regular intervals and are you eating balanced in those intervals?
So then speed, I guess I keep going back to how going slow helps us. And I think that what you're talking about then is that the slower you go, the more tuned in you can be to the present moment's needs, the present moment's requirements, so that you can notice, oh, I am thirsty. Oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, I need to eat. Oh, I need to sleep. Like,
Yeah.
is speed something like, I don't know, the way I learned it almost, it's almost like you can, if you go so fast through life, not only are you not being responsive to this body, it's like you are trying to use all your resources to keep up with some sort of external drive. And yet you're
Hmm.
never coming back to ask the body, is this the drive we want to go on?
Totally. Because you can have a lot of momentum and going in the completely wrong direction that you actually want to go, right? So there is what our culture tells us, the conditioning that we take in that we think we should be doing. And then there's what the body needs
Yeah.
that we should be doing. And then there's also like on a soul level, like what did you come out here on earth to do? Sometimes we blow that up into like we need to be this most amazing benevolent person in the world, and that is not realistic. But like there's little soul signals in there too, which I do feel is very tied into the body. Right?
Yeah.
How can you hear that smaller, quieter voice of the soul when there's so much noise
Yeah.
covering up what it's trying to tell you?
Yeah. Is that song playing in your head? I'm in a hurry to get things done. I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 0 to 60 in 5.2, like that whole idea of like fast. And when we go fast, we are not giving our body time to digest the experiences of our life. We're not laying down long-term memories. We're just not. We're
Mm-hmm.
missing that neural integration of our life experiences into long-term memories. And so,
Hmm.
like if we don't start paying attention to some of this stuff, we're going to get to the end of our lives and not remember any of it. That would
Yeah.
be tragic. And so yeah. And I want to also say digesting that, like just physically digesting. Physical digestion requires our time. And
Hmm.
there is wisdom in Ayurveda that says that 90% of our digestive issues can be solved, can be resolved if we just paid attention to how we eat, if we followed healthier eating guidelines. And the healthier
Hmm.
eating guidelines are sit when you eat, um, be appreciative and have gratitude over your food, chew your food 20 times, um, prepare your table, prepare your food so that
Hmm.
you're not just sort of grabbing something and like just mowing it down on your way to the car to drive somewhere. Like you slow down, and that in doing so, we solve 90% of our digestive issues. And let's just face it, our world is full of digestive issues right now.
Right. Hmm.
So this idea of slowing down is helping us mentally process traumas, get out of old patterns, switch gears, make new choices. It's helping us digest physically our food. Where else do you think that it's aiding us, the slowing down?
Integration, right? The integration of experiences, and also the ability to really actually enjoy things, right? If you rush through things, you can't enjoy it. Like there's a Venusian quality of slowing down, like feeling into the tactile. Like Venusian things are a little bit luxurious, really nice. They feel good. They take their time. But Venusian qualities are also tied to like the signs of Taurus, which is like a really stable sign. They work hard and they also really enjoy their downtime, their playtime, their vacations. They want to enjoy the fullness of life, right?
Yeah.
So they're not just not working, you know, they're working and they're enjoying. They're really taking things in full season.
Yeah, absolutely. Letting the whole experience sort of play out. So there is something then around enjoyment, pleasure, easefulness that
Mhm.
only happens when you go slow enough. Think about even
Mhm.
how it relates into our nervous system. So if your
Mhm.
nervous system is in parasympathetic mode, meaning like it's not stressed out at all, it's like perfectly content to be on that vacation, to enjoy that meal, to hang out in this
Mhm.
company, like all those things. And that is when your body is optimal, when you are in that parasympathetic
Yeah.
nervous system. And speed is one of the first things that triggers stress response.
And I want to say too, speed is okay if you're doing one thing and it's a really focused target, right? Like you want to do that one thing, you want to do it fast, that's great. Speed is, I want to say, to our detriment when we're trying to do many things at once,
Mm,
right?
mhm. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I like that. So if you have single pointed focus, then throw on the gas for sure.
Hmm.
But if you are trying to get lots of things done, yeah. Yoga speaks of the concept of adhikara, which is the gaps. So if your
Hmm.
body is a sieve and there's little holes all over the place, if you fill those gaps, then that container becomes capable of holding. And if you want your life to hold more, you have to make sure that there's no leaks. There's no
Hmm.
holes where energy, life, um, vitality, immunity, all of those things are draining out of. And in order to sort of make sure that your container doesn't have cracks and holes in it, you need to do some sort of downtime, some maintenance, some
Hmm.
restoration, some like it's like taking your car for an oil change. There's things that are necessary to keep it running well. And sometimes you have to take yourself, like you talked about taking yourself offline and going to journal when
Hmm.
you hit that spot where you're like, I can't go forward this way anymore. You took yourself offline and processed. And in that
Hmm.
same way, I think we need to take ourselves offline and do that self-maintenance. But it could be journaling, it could be sleeping and eating a good meal.
It could be doing restorative yoga or yin yoga. It could be meditating. It could be doing breath work.
Yeah.
And I want to say, if like you've never done any of these things, sometimes doing it in like a group community space is a great way to start, because everyone is focused on that one thing at the same time. You kind of break off and do your individual thing, and then you come together.
Yeah. Always, right?
Mhm.
There's so much capacity inside of our inside of these communities to be able to help us go slow. I don't know though. Like I feel like our world doesn't want to hear this lesson, that somehow there's a belief system in each of us that believes that slow is lazy, slow is unmotivated, slow is unproductive. Like we have all these equations, false things that we're talking about.
But is that true?
Well, I mean, I don't think it is, but we're being fed, like it's almost like you're talking about, it's built into our DNA to believe these things, and it's not serving us.
So what would you do about that? If it's not true and you're being fed it, what's one to do?
But I do think that that's where you talked about there's some effort here. There's some
There's
effort
some effort.
going.
And
If
you have to want it, and you have to want to walk in faith and see the other side of what is true there. Is slowness laziness, or is it tapping into your own inner awareness and intuition? Is slowness unproductive, or does it give space for the genius of your soul to speak through you in a way you would never hear if you were fully busy and saturated with consuming?
yeah, because it is when it's almost like it's like slowness has to do with things like doing nothing, letting yourself be bored, allowing gaps in your day where you don't have anything on your to-do list that needs to be checked off, which is a really
Mhm.
hard one to let happen. But there's something to be said about the power in that, um, and here I'm going to use another word, in that idleness, because
Mhm.
maybe even that word idle has negative connotations, but in that idleness, there is a germination happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to ask, like, who is saying these things? Where are we hearing these
Yeah.
things? Who is they?
Yeah. Who is they? Absolutely. Who is they? Yeah.
And is it just like a simple adjustment of like, we need to make it a different cultural norm because this is unsustainable now? And be uncomfortable with being, okay with embracing slowness and not adopting those negative titles that we have for them. Like, why do you have to adopt that? You don't. It's a
Yeah.
personal choice.
Yeah. And I think as we're noticing that our society is increasing its distraction, it's
Yeah.
increasing how it is um, trying to divide and separate and keep us disconnected from our own wisdom, it we start to even feel like viscerally this idea of like I need to withdraw from this they voice that's telling me and
Hmm.
directing me, and I need to come back. So what do you think if we start, going into slowness, fostering our own sovereignty, finding self-awareness, um,
Hmm.
knowing this deeper connection to ourselves and our communities? What do you think this slow revolution could look like? I love even thinking that way.
Well, I think we would feel a whole lot better. But I actually think there's just one thing I want to talk about first, because when you start to change and live in a different way than you've been programmed, or like go countercultural, there's always a little bit of pushback. And I think people think like, I'm going to do this great thing and I believe it. And we think we're going to have this really nice, smooth ride into it. And that I want to say, not that it needs to be really hard, but it's not without some bumps on the road and without a little pushback, even from the people you love.
Yeah.
Like when I went on the Pacific Crest Trail and I was gone for 4.5 months and I was, going from the Mexican border to the Canadian border across the US, I was able to be in nature every day and life was very simple. All I had to do was eat, hike, or ride my bike, depending where I was, and sleep. It's so simple. Never has my life been simpler. Coming back, getting reintegrated with my family life and with work was really challenging for me. It was so overwhelming to be put back in a culture that wants you to go, 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 not really take any downtime, and be on all the time, right? So slowly over time, I was able to make some changes. But what happened when I initially got back is I had this newfound awareness and I went back into old habits because one, I didn't actually know how to integrate my experience into real life quite yet. But as time passed over the next few years, I was able to, one thing at a time, integrate change in my relationships and how I do things. And there was pushback in my relationships because people expected me to be how I was in the past, which I'm doing all these things for you and I make you feel really good. And I can do that sometimes, but sometimes my body wisdom is telling me to do something else, or I really need some downtime or a break, or I need some solitude for a couple days, right? And that can sometimes feel like, we don't do that in our culture. Why do you do that? Why are you asking for these needs? There is some pushback. But once you start doing it anyways, it actually becomes normal and people adapt and they actually are super great about it. But it takes time and it takes a few tries, especially with your loved ones and people in your inner circle. I'm talking about specifically.
So it's almost like the lessons that you learned, there was a few of them when you came back, your body's like, oh, we're not going back to that. And
Hmm.
you had to learn how to articulate, set good boundaries, and then be able to hold those boundaries with compassion and love for both yourself and the people around you. But but speed was something you were unwilling to let back in some ways, or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Multitasking especially, but also speed. Like, um, yeah, it's just nuts what is expected of us and what we actually put on the table every day. Like, there's a reason why adrenal burnout and thyroid issues are so prevalent. Like, I think the stats are something like 70 to 80% of women have thyroid disease. That's crazy. One, that's us not using our voice and speaking up on our own, in our own advocacy of
Yeah.
our needs and
Yeah.
our desires,
Like
right?
you're right. Like that thyroidism, Hashimoto's, like it has to
Hmm.
do with slowing down. Slowing
Yeah.
down is a natural healing, and slowing down and coming into your own awareness. These sort of steps, they're natural ways to heal these, I'm going to say diagnoses that Western medicine says, oh, you're going to need to
Yeah.
take medication your whole life.
Right. And the slowing down purpose really is one, to regenerate energy, and two, to tap in our own inner awareness and be able to speak and manifest that into the physical reality.
Yeah. So So when I think about sort of like 75% of women have this um, drain happening in their biology, in their biological body, we would say like what we're saying right now is that guys slow down because that is one of the first key pieces of your healing. And then what
Mhm.
how you and I were talking, I was saying, okay, you need to know what you can say yes to, what you can say no to. You need to start to understand what habits you need to bring into your life. And you were saying, okay, Jill, you're like, don't go too many places. But yes, we can. Like it's like
Mhm.
the first step is you can slow down so that the second step is you can notice what you need. What habits do you need?
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
How do you respond to your hunger, your thirst, your tiredness, your emotions, your needs, your innate body needs? How do you respond to those? And can you have a relationship to those needs that is loving, considerate,
Mhm,
supportive?
mhm, mhm.
And that requires you to be present, and presence requires you to not go too fast.
Exactly. So when we slow down, you can tap into your physical, your spiritual, your emotional needs. And then the whole purpose of that is so you can self-advocate to get what you want in life.
Absolutely.
Right? We like women are trained honestly to like serve others, whether it's their partner, their children, their friends, their family. And that servitude does us a disservice because it cuts us off from our own inner fire and our own like there's like a primal wild animal that lives in there. And so when we don't get to use that in the real world through our voice, we turn it inward and then we get those like narratives of like telling us we're no good or we're not successful or whatever it is. Everyone has their own unique kind of little voice that's the negative Nancy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But when you're in tune with yourself, when you are aware, and when you start to create those habits that bring you into awareness regularly, you have that place where you can operate from your own self sovereignty. And
Hmm.
it's not um, demonizing anyone else, and it's not putting anyone else down. It's advocating through your own power for yourself, but also for other people, depending on what's happening in your life.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something really profound about it for me, and that it's an ability to come, like I think speed has to do with coming, taking my foot off the gas, but being aware of, and you spoke to it right at the very beginning, you sort of said an on switch or an off switch.
Mhm,
And slow is like, it's the in between. It's,
mhm,
you don't have to sort of like go all out 110%, but you also are not going to crash to zero.
mhm.
Maybe we're starting to understand that there's a reason why there's a whole Aesop's fable about the tortoise and the hare, and
Oh,
how the
totally.
tortoise is the one who won
Yeah.
the race, right?
Mhm,
So that the slow and steady, and we are in spring season. We are in the slow and steady season of these seeds being planted, and they need time, and they need sunlight, and they need nutritious soil, and they need water in order to be able to crack through and grow.
mhm.
And
Also, in Alberta, our spring is late. Like everyone talks about spring, it's February or March, sorry. I'm in
yeah,
the wrong month. Oh my
spring's in
gosh.
March,
But
or
but
it's in May, not
like
March.
it doesn't really happen. It happens a little bit like we get sunnier weather and stuff and we might get some nice days, but it can also be -30 in March
Yeah.
sometimes. And the leaves, as much as we want to will it to happen like in March, the leaves are probably not going to come out till the end of April or the beginning of May.
Yeah. Yeah. And so watch nature, because nature, especially where we live, has a long, quiet fallow period.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that is the other thing too, is that when we let ourselves be in rhythm with nature, we stop having to work so freaking hard to get things done, because the natural qualities of the world around us will have us flowing downstream with such ease and effortlessness. Um, but we need to know how to align with that rhythm. And that rhythm is slow. It's slow
Hmm.
and steady. And there's a predictability to it, even though there is lots of variance and variability to it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Chelsey, is there anything else that you think we really need to talk about going slow?
I think we I think we've covered most
Yeah.
of it.
I'm peeking at our notes, and it does look like we've done a good job of that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, our invitation to you guys is to find ways to go slow, to find ways to allow yourself to let the foot off the gas and just decrease your pace instead of waiting till you crash to zero. And
Hmm.
to know that, even going 20, um, pointed in the right direction, slow and steady, sometimes can get you there faster and more efficiently without the burnout that is chronic in our world today. Yeah. More to add?
No, I think that's perfect.